now live and it has started recording. So what we'll do is we'll pause the recording for now till we actually start the thing.
Sure.
Yeah, start with the presentation. So thank you so much everyone for attending. There are a few people from Excellent as well. So hello. Also hello to everyone else who I did not say hello to. And yeah, welcome to this webinar. As you can read the title, it's OpenShift 101. The reason we chose 101 was this is very, very fundamental because deploying, this OKD on AWS is very, very basic. So that's where we started off. And yeah, it's going to be presented by Srikar today. And while I want to introduce Srikar, in detail, I'll just use the speaker bio and take the basic items out of the way. So he's a AWS certified solution architect and a CK, so that's certified Kubernetes administrator as well. He has been actively working on Linux, Kubernetes, OpenShift, GitLab, CI, Docker, Ansible, AWS, and other technologies and tools and platforms. Yeah, for over 9 years now. He's passionate about sharing his learnings, as you can see. So yeah, with whoever is interested. So that's what we're doing right now. And yeah, he also enjoys competitive volleyball with his friends. From last what I spoke to him, I recall that he used to play with the folks in the society, and that has gone down. Yeah, so because of the whole situation, but we won't mention that. So yeah, a huge round of applause for Srikar. I mean, well, you can clap if you want to, or just put the clapping icon on your non-verbal cues. And welcome, Srikar. Over to you, Srikar.
Hey, thank you, Pat. Thank you, folks, for joining. This is my first webinar, and I'm really excited and also a bit worried. So please bear with me. And I thank Path and my organization Accelerant for giving us the opportunity to talk or to share our learnings or knowledge with everybody, outside of Accelerant as well. So thank you, Path and Accelerant, for that. And folks, I'm really not sure from which backgrounds every one of you have been coming, but I'll try to make sure that I explain to you at the very basic level. If you have any questions, maybe you can note them down and ask them during the Q&A session. All right. Right, so let's get started. So the topic was about how to deploy OKD on AWS. OKD is nothing but the OpenShift's open source version or the community version. So this is a bit about me. I'm a site reliability engineer at Accelerant, and I have about 9+ years of experience in IT. And as Pat said, I love playing volleyball, go on long drives, or play with my dog. And yeah, so these are the tools that I currently work. And I also would love to start contributing to the Kubernetes project, which is open source. I'm actually preparing for that. There has to be some things that have to be learned in order to contribute. So I'm doing that. And I've recently got selected to AWS Community Builder Program as well, where we'll be contributing to AWS community as part of a team, and we'll experience some of the AWS related services before they're even released into production. So I'm really excited about that as well. And I have these 2 certifications. And if you want to touch base with me, you can contact me on either on LinkedIn or Twitter. These are my handles. And I forgot to mention, I have a blog also. It is srikarachanta.com. You can even check that out. It is at a very basic level, but I think I'm going to do a lot of activity on that in the coming days. So that's pretty much about me. And so, I know we are all here today to actually talk about or know about how to deploy OpenShift or OKD on AWS. So you can do that by giving this command. It's just one command: OpenShift install, create cluster, and the directory of installation directory, and log level is equals to info. One command, it will create your cluster. So, well, that's it. Any questions? I know I know you're surprised that this guy is saying bye always. Uh, it's just, I'm just getting ready. So there's a lot to come. So before we dive deep into OKD or container orchestration engines, I want to tell you the story behind this particular slide because uh, one of our colleague who actively is working on OKD, he just told us that it could be just installed with just one straight line command. So, but literally me and Path, we took 2 days to install a cluster in production. So we were laughing about that and we wanted to include that in the webinar as well. That's the reason why we put this up. So let's get started now. So before we get into OKD and all, we should step back a bit and then we have to talk about what are container orchestration engines. And I'm sure most of you have knowledge about containers and this technology. So I will be skipping that and I'll talk about directly the container orchestration engines. So these are like container, as the image shows, it's like these orchestration engines are used to manage multiple containers in a large and dynamic environments. So uh, we have many container orchestration engines in the market today, and some of these are there on the screen: Kubernetes, OpenShift, Docker Swarm, Rancher, and Nomad. So most of them are famous, but I mean, I'm particularly interested in both of them, Kubernetes and OpenShift. And so that's the reason I kept it in the middle also. So since our topic is about OpenShift, and I'm mostly, I would request all of you to just check about the other tools also on the official websites. So, so what is OpenShift? So if you see, you can see a car on that, and you might be wondering why I'm mentioning about a car or engine. So there's a lot of connection between OpenShift and a car or an engine. So it's like we sorry, there is some disturbance. Okay, so just like how we have a car here, we have an engine and a car here in the picture. So you can take Kubernetes as the engine of the car. So, and the complete car is something like OpenShift. So what Red Hat has done is Red Hat has, sorry. So what OpenShift or Red Hat has done it is they have developed many features on top of an engine, which is Kubernetes in this case. And they've built a lot of features on top of that. And then they've built a whole car, which is actually our OpenShift. So if you see in this image, you'll have, so Kubernetes is in the middle. It's the engine of this entire package or entire software. And on top of that, they have built different components. So to talk more about this, like you can uh, take Kubernetes as a driving or as a that drives OpenShift. Or you can also say like Kubernetes is something like a kernel and OpenShift is considered to be like a distribution. Like for example, OpenShift is actually just like how, uh, we have a kernel. On top of that, everybody can actually, you and me also can develop our own distribution of Linux using the kernel. So the same way, you can also use the Kubernetes, which is like a kernel, and you can develop your own version of a container orchestration engine on top of, you can build on top of Kubernetes. And that's what actually even Red Hat has done. And some of the main things that uh, OpenShift make OpenShift a smarter Kubernetes platform is that uh, it actually has inbuilt features that are built on top of Kubernetes, which most of the which are like mostly are developer friendly or operations friendly. So if you see only the native Kubernetes, Kubernetes looks to be like a more of an operations tool. So Red Hat, what it has done differently is that it built a kind of features on top of Kubernetes, and it also achieved the goals of a developer, so that it gives a best developer experience as well while giving operations team uh, advantage by using this tool to maintain a large and dynamic environments. So that is something, I mean, if you ask me, it's something very great about OpenShift. And working in OpenShift from last 1.5 years, I feel it definitely adds a lot of, I mean, it addresses a lot of overheads to us as administrators to manage the dynamic environments. And but if you see, there is not much difference between OpenShift and Kubernetes. It's like OpenShift at heart is Kubernetes. So it's like 100% certified Kubernetes and open source and non-proprietary. So for example, the API to the OpenShift cluster is Kubernetes. So when you run a command, so this is, I'm in part, I've taken the screenshots from one of our OpenShift cluster. So generally in Kubernetes, if you want to check the pods, you just give kubectl get pods and give the namespace, and it will list down the whatever the pods that are running in that namespace. So even in an OpenShift cluster, you can still use kubectl. Generally, OpenShift cluster, we have an OpenShift CLI called OC. So instead of kubectl, we use OC here. But you can even use kubectl to do all operations. Just a minute.
So that's Srikar's dog, Putti, I think, yeah, and yeah, he is sometimes, yeah, fun.
Sorry, guys.
It's fun.
Right. So yeah. So just like how we use kubectl, we can uh, use OC here in OpenShift to list down the pods and all the other stuff. So to come back to the same point, OpenShift, what OpenShift does differently. So you can ask me that when Kubernetes and OpenShift is same. So what definitely OpenShift brings onto the table? Well, it definitely adds value. Added, there are many added value features for OpenShift where I mean, by complementing Kubernetes, and it's like just as I said, how it gave a developer, I mean, it gives a developer friendly environment. It also has become into a proper platform as a service tool. So that's generally what people are expecting today, where they just don't want to take any overheads. They just don't. They just want to deploy their workloads on a platform as a service environment. So OpenShift is one best example for such service. And apart from platform as a service, which helps most of the developers, we also have OpenShift as a container as a service, which helps a lot of administrators. So that way, OpenShift complements Kubernetes and adds many features on top of Kubernetes. So now let's see what is OKD. OKD is nothing but it's also OpenShift, but OpenShift on a it's like an open source version of OpenShift. Definitely, OpenShift has a premium product called OpenShift Container Platform that actually has many enterprise features or enterprise support available. So if you don't want that support, you can rely on OKD, which is the community edition of OpenShift. Whatever you have in the OpenShift container platform, you get all those features in a community version also. So you can use this OKD to deploy it on your on-premise or your cloud environments, and you can like achieve the. I mean, you can make use of this great product. So um, talking more about OpenShift, what happens is that whenever a new Kubernetes release happens, so when the cutover of the Kubernetes release happens, that's when OpenShift the Red Hat starts its work on OpenShift. It builds on top of this Kubernetes version and adds all the features that are more requested by the users, like which users are looking forward to have it in their solution. So that's why whenever a Kubernetes release happens, an OpenShift release also happens subsequently later, once on top of this Kubernetes. So that's how we actually came to know about OKD, and we started using OKD in our environment. And we have had a lot of advantages as well for that. So before we go forward, so we basically try to install OKD on AWS because we are an AWS partner, and apart from that, we also have good experience working when running our workloads on AWS. So that's the reason why we chose AWS. We do have OKD cluster, which was older one running on another cloud provider, DigitalOcean. I'll talk about that once we come to that stage. So since this installation is basically on a AWS cloud environment, these prerequisites are designed. Some of the prerequisites here are designed in like in line with that. So if you see here on the this thing, we have some of the free prerequisites like AWS account, which has administrative privileges and also the programmatic access to AWS. And we also need the SSH private and public keys because these are required during the cluster setup, and these will be copied onto the master and worker nodes after the cluster setup or during the cluster setup. And if you are looking for, you need also TLS certificates because you get this security warning whenever you try to access the page, right? That's because you have to install your TLS certificates. So you need to have those certificates as well as part of the setup. And then you also need to figure out your authentication. So if you are a Google, like if you are having an authentication based on Google, you can actually create some APIs or on the Google API wizard, and you can generate those kind of credentials. So I see people pinging me. Okay. Okay, so when we come to the Q&A section, I will definitely answer your questions.
Yeah.
So if you, for example, if you have any other authentication types, you should also make sure you have all the things ready. And the best part is that OpenShift provides you like a very good documentation. I mean, in the recent times, I mean, at least in my little experience that I worked, I think the best sites that have good documentation in the areas that I have worked is Kubernetes, OpenShift, and Ansible. So you will get each and every documentation from the OpenShift website. I've added a few links as well for how do we install OpenShift and all that in the references section. You can refer to them once we have this webinar over, and I'll share the slide deck. All right, and EFS volumes. You can also, for example, if you want data persistence, you can also make use of EFS volumes. You also have to create them in the AWS console and have them handy. All right. So basically, we can install OKD in two ways. One is quick install, and another one is custom install. So we have used custom install in our case because we wanted to have some parameters that accordingly to our needs. So we have chose custom install in our case, and both of the links, they are available in the reference section. So we have our AWS account ready, and we also have our SSH keys. The installation program, I've already downloaded that, and there is something called installation config file that we have to run. So that config file will actually get generated when we are installing the OpenShift cluster. And once we have the installation file, the config file, we use that file to install the cluster. So we use that using the OpenShift install create cluster command. And once the cluster is up, you also have to download a client, which is like OC. I told you, right? OpenShift CLI that you have to download from the OpenShift website for accessing or to interact with the OpenShift cluster on the command line. You can also interact with OpenShift using the UI, which I will show you in some time. So once you have an OpenShift cluster installed, you would first get your Kubernetes kubeadmin credentials. So that's the basic first credential that you will have to get inside your cluster, and then you can set up different things. Well, once that's done, your cluster is up. So let's get started with that. So this is my uh, like I have this command prompt ready for this thing. So I have my OpenShift installer already. I've downloaded that. You can download that from the just I'll show the website. So this is from where I've downloaded the OpenShift install. So and I've like untarred it in my these are the files that get downloaded. So I've untarred them and uh, so this is the AWS link that I'm going to use for installing our cluster. So I've shared this link as well in the references section. So we have to, the first command that we are going to do is OpenShift install create install config. That's the important thing here we have to do. So I will be using the same command here, and since I'm already in the directory there where I want, I'll just give dot here so that it will create in the current directory. So it is asking me, so it will ask you a few questions for like, what is the public key? I mean, different parameters will be there. So we will be using all of them. So I already have my key, cloudops.pub, that I want to use in this case. So I would select that. Then it is asking me on which cloud provider do I want to install. So since I'm installing it on AWS, I'll select AWS. And it also will ask you what is the region. So I want to deploy it on the region that is very close to me, which is Mumbai. So I will select that. And then it will ask me what domain you want to use. So we have different domains here. So, but I want to use domain called accelerate.xyz. So I would select that. And then it is asking me for my cluster name. So I would say the cluster name is webinar. You can give your own cluster so that it appends to the URL of your OpenShift console. So here I'm using webinar, and this is called pull secret. So when you're doing an OKD installation, uh, the pull secret is there for, this is for OpenShift container platform. If you have a pull secret, you have to give the pull secret here. So if you have the premium product installed in your organization or you want to use that, then you can log in into the Red Hat website, and there they will generate a pull secret for you. So in this case, I want to use the community edition. So I will use this for my pull secret, which is blank. Oh, sorry. All right. So now what happens is that once this is done, we have a config file created. So if I go into the config file, so this is what it is actually creating it. So it is a base domain will be created for, I mean, the base domain that we have to use is axel8.xyz, and it has 3 replicas of master and another 3 replicas for worker nodes. If you see here, this is the worker nodes. So you have 3 master nodes and 3 worker nodes. And you can even enable auto scaling of these nodes. And I've actually included the link for that as well. You can even do through the command line, or you can even do through the OpenShift console. But I mean, right now it might take some time for do that. So it's outside of the scope of this webinar. You can refer the links. Maybe you can have a good information about that in the link, and you can even get back to us if you have any questions on that. So I'm configuring it to have 3 master servers and 3 worker nodes. And this is my cluster. It is always taking, already it is taking from my AWS account. And this is the credential, I mean, the region that I've given. And this is the full secret that I've given, and this is my key. So it is taking from my key. So So now, since now we have created the command, created the config file, what we have to do now is we have to install it. Use this config file and use the install the cluster. So for that, I will use my create cluster command. I'm using the current directory. And right, so it is taking my credentials, and so I've already included my credentials in AWS folder of credentials. Well, I didn't want to show it because it was something secret to me. So that's the reason why I didn't want to show it. So, but my AWS credentials are already configured here, which are with a default profile. So since this installation is going to take 40 minutes, what I've done is I've already deployed a cluster for you guys. So this is my OpenShift cluster that I've created just before this. I mean, the webinar started a couple of days before. So I will show you the next part from here. So since it is going to take almost like 40 minutes for the OKD installation to be done. So this is my cluster. So once the cluster is created, what happens is that it will give us this screen. Log in with KubeADM admin or Google. So this Google came because I've integrated my Google authentication to it. So generally, this is the only page that you'll get where you will have KubeAdmin. So if you go here, I already saved my password. So it logs into the OKD cluster. So this is how your OKD cluster looks. And I'm sure most of you who have actually worked on Kubernetes will know that you will see a console in your cloud provider for your EWS or EKS clusters. So that one, uh, what happens is that is very different. That you will have only limited things there visible, but here you can see everything. For example, how many projects you have and what are the workloads like pods, deployments, deployment config, stateful sets, secrets, config maps, everything. All of them you can see from the UI as well. You can even create these objects from the UI. And you can even see your services, routes, ingress policy, storage. All of this stuff will be available in your OKD cluster. Right. So all right. So since this is going to happen for some time. Oh, just checking why it's not happening. Okay, that's because we have exceeded maximum number of VPCs. I have to clean that up. All right. So since we don't have much time, I will actually try to show the previous one. Uh, so going into my VPCs. Okay, so per region, it requires 5 VPCs to be running, and it's already 5, and that's the reason why it failed. Okay, so all right. So this is because if you see the error message, error creating VPC limit exceeded. The maximum number of VPCs has been reached. So since we don't have much time, what I would want to say is that if you're, you should, I mean, these VPCs are already 5. If you delete one of the unused VPCs, then the installation would progress. So that's how actually we got all this cluster created. We created it a few days back. I'm sorry about that, but I mean, due to the time constraints, I think I have to skip this. But maybe I will write a blog with screenshots so that you guys can actually see what happened after the installation, or what are the error messages that were created that came up during the installation. So if you want, I can also see logs. All right, so this is OpenShift install log. So once I've executed that command, this is what happens. So this is how the log looks. I'll show you the last line so that. So yeah, if you see here, that's how it will create a cluster, and it will give the cluster console address. So this is the console address once it is created, and this is the admin, and this is the password. So that's how it will actually do the things as part of the deployment. I'm really sorry that I'm showing the old log, but that's what it happens. And due to the time constraints, let's move forward. So this is my OKD cluster. So once your cluster is up, what you can do is you can deploy a sample application. So that's what I'm going to do now. So I have my sample application here. So this is my project. So webinars, the same. This is the same project that we built inside our company for hosting our internal knowledge sharings. So this is based out of Drupal, PHP, MySQL, and we regularly use this platform for hosting internal learning sessions and webinars. So I'm going to deploy the same application onto my Kubernetes cluster, my OpenShift cluster. Sorry. So this is my branch. So I will run a pipeline. So we use GitLab CI for GitLab CI/CD for our CI/CD. Apart from GitLab being used for the version control system. So this is my pipeline screen. I'll go here and I'll run a pipeline. So my branch is opd4.xsd. I'll just run a pipeline. So there are 3 stages in our pipeline: initial, deploy to OS, and then stop. So let's see what happens. So now when this is deployed, what happens is that we will get a webinars project here. So if I go to my projects, search webinars. So this is the project I just created. See, it was created a few seconds ago. So the first step of it is it will create. So it has, I told you, right? It has 3 stages. So the first stage is initial. First stage is initial deploy, which is already happening. And the second stage is deploy to OS, and it's already running, where it will deploy my application by deploying pods. So you can go here and see deployment configs. So this is inside my webinar project. If I go to my deployment configs, so it is already spinning up my pod for database, and this is my application. So see, it is still scaling. Go to DB, It already has the pod running. The beauty of your OpenShift is that it even shows your YAML file in the console. So generally, you will have to see through the command line only. But in OpenShift, everything can be viewed through the uh, OpenShift console as well. And you can even make changes and click on save so that it will recreate the pod or recreate whatever is that object, right? So still taking some time. Let's see, let's wait for it to happen. So before we since the application is deploying, I wanted to share some of our experiences with running OpenShift actually in our environment. So we were actually trying to evaluate different solutions as part of our hosting internal applications or client-related development environments inside our organization's environment. So at that point of time, we were evaluating all the available ones like EKS or Google's Kubernetes engine, all these things. But we finally came to OpenShift because we wanted to have the developer experience and all the advantages that OpenShift brings in. So that's why we chose OpenShift over EKS and other solutions. So some of the uh, challenges or some of the observations that we have like that we got from our from running these workloads on OKD are like previously to take a step back, we were hosting the same OKD environment on our another cloud called DigitalOcean. So DigitalOcean is also our partner, and we had good experience on DigitalOcean as well. But with respect to when we started deploying applications, what happened is that DigitalOcean doesn't have auto scaling of nodes. So that was having a tough. We were having a tough time because uh, every time we had to go and we had to add nodes manually, which is a tedious process. So, and also the nodes used to get occupied so fast. And whenever application load, different applications used to be deployed, we used to have issues with that. So at that time, we wanted to have something like auto scaling, and unfortunately, it was not available on DigitalOcean. And few others were like in OKD, you enable the auto scaling using cluster autoscaler. So I've included the link in the references section. So the cluster autoscaler, basically what it does is it will make use of the cloud environments autoscaling feature, and it will autoscale the nodes whenever there is a requirement. It will auto increase or decrease the number of nodes based on the workloads. So DigitalOcean doesn't support cluster autoscaler as well. So that was another drawback that we had with DigitalOcean, and that is one of the reasons why we wanted to move out of DigitalOcean and come back to the AWS, because AWS provides both, supports both cluster autoscaler, and also it has autoscaling enabled. Like autoscaling of nodes is by default there in AWS. And another feature that we were having tough time with DigitalOcean, uh, this actually might be coming in AWS as well, but the observation on this solution is that we were not able to create read write many storage access modes. So this is basically related to persistent volumes and persistent volume claims. So even that we had issues on this solution, and that's the reason why we actually wanted to move out of DigitalOcean and bring our workloads on AWS. So we even had the same experience with respect to persistent volumes and claims on AWS as well. So we are exploring and using OpenEBS, which is an open source block storage solution. You can even check about that online once you if you want to, if you're interested on OpenEBS. So if you see here, my application pod and my database pod both are up. So let's go and see. So this is my URL of the application. Right. So this is the webinar page. So it will actually have all our webinar related stuff. I mean, this has some old data because of the database, I guess. But generally, this is our webinar internal webinar page. I mean, this is a development environment, but we have a production page where it will show all the recent events, like whatever the event show and tell. So our Accelerant supports more of sharing of knowledge with peers and also with the external world. So as part of that, we have every Wednesday we have webinars running, show and tells or webinars or learn club meetings happening regularly in our organization. So that's how we share information with our peers, or we learn new things. Or for example, if I worked on any critical issue in the recent times, so you can go and share it with the peers during the show and tell sessions. So this is our page. So the deployment now this is running on our Kubernetes, on our OKD cluster. So that's how you actually can deploy a application on OKD cluster. So coming back to our experiences. So as I said, we had good experience with open EBS rather than the cloud provider solutions. So we are currently exploring open EBS for like a like to create a pool of the storage disks and then host our persistent volumes or volume claims. I mean, host our volumes on top of that. And even the another disadvantage we saw with DigitalOcean is that we OKD doesn't have a proper installer for DigitalOcean. So we had to write our own scripts for installing the OKD on DigitalOcean, and we had a tough time with that. So uh, whereas with AWS, we already have ready-made scripts. And another thing with DigitalOcean is that DigitalOcean doesn't have a support for Fedora instances. So OKD, as you know, it's like a Red Hat solution. OKD supports Fedora instances, and uh, because DigitalOcean didn't support that, we had to import those images into DigitalOcean, and then we have to create a snapshot and other things to create a proper image for our master or uh, worker nodes. So that is a lot of manual overhead we had, and we wanted to get over that. And that is also one of the reasons why we moved out of DigitalOcean. Well, there are other advantages on DigitalOcean with respect to pricing, but end of the day, when we saw it on an overview basis, we thought that there are a lot of drawbacks for us in our case, and that is the reason why we actually wanted to we actually decided to move into DigitalOcean, AWS. I'm sorry. So what we did was we were having few other issues which are not dependent on the cloud. Uh, these were like uh, multiple master and multiple worker. So previously we were using 3.11 version of OKD on DigitalOcean. So at that time of installation, what we did a mistake, or it's a learning for us, that we deployed OKD cluster using only one master and multiple workers. So actually speaking, even OpenShift also doesn't recommend that, or Red Hat also doesn't recommend deploying in one master, single master and multiple workers. Red Hat recommends multiple master and multiple workers. That's the reason why, if you remember, we have selected 3 masters and 3 workers during our installation. So even that was problem for us. So that's considering all these things, what we did was we deployed a new latest OKD cluster 4.5 on AWS using the same method that I've showed you a few minutes back. And we were able to deploy successfully, and we even integrated all our authentication systems and the TLS certificates and all of that. And now it looks good. Like we have a lot of advantage, and we see a lot of development, improvement in the services as well. And even since autoscaler is supported in AWS, we even have, I mean, currently in production cluster we have enabled, but in the development that I've showed you, I didn't enable it. So we even enable cluster autoscaler in our production so that whenever there's a need, it will automatically scale. So these are some of our experiences running OKD and some of the issues that we faced, and few other issues also that we faced when we were deploying OKD is that running into resources, maximum resources, like how we have seen VPCs have exceeded. So apart from VPCs, we also had internet gateways at the maximum. So when you are installing OKD, you should actually consider checking these factors as well. So they're not at the maximum limit, and you have to correct them if they are at the maximum limit. So I think that's something experiences are around. Um, I hope that I was able to explain my experience to every one of you at a very basic level so that you get to understand. And I'm really sorry about the cluster installation part that couldn't happen because of limit crossing. So these are some of the reference sections links. I'll share this slide deck, and uh, these are some of the URLs from where I've picked up information for this webinar. I've also included how to do a custom install, a quick install, and also enabling auto scaling in OKD. I'm hoping that these would be very much useful, and you can even post questions to us through different channels that I've posted before, and we'll be happy to help. So let's get to the Q&A section.
All right. Yeah. So we already have one question from Prasad
Okay.
In the Q&A section. But in case other folks have any questions, feel free to drop them into the Q&A segment. So yeah, we'll while we answer this question, you can put in your questions in there. So yeah, also thanks, Srikar. That was pretty exhaustive, and I know while it was just an overview, I think the experiences helped a little more for the folks as well. I hope to gain a little bit more insight into why some of the decisions were taken, and what kind of problems can you expect on your end, and how should you be prepared for the installation. And it's not just one line command that can install the whole thing. So yeah, I think there are some questions already into the Q&A segment. So we'll start off with Prasad then. So Prasad's question is, was support the only okay? So what is the only service I'm going to lose if I go with community version over enterprise? So he's asking, is support the only thing that I will lose out on if he goes out with the community version over enterprise?
So support is one thing. Another thing is that even in OpenShift container platform, it supports all the Red Hat based images. So you have a lot of advantage with Red Hat images as well instead of using open source image when it comes to security. So if your organization is running any other containers which are running non-Red Hat or non-proprietary containers, there is a lot of chance for you have to involve more of third-party softwares to scan your software, scan your containers. Whereas Red Hat provides you all the ready-made containerized and secured images. So that is one of the advantages. Also, you run. You have running OpenShift, the version OpenShift container platform.
All right. I hope that answers your question, Prasad. So the next question is from D. Kumar. He asks that, I have, so obviously he says, hi, Srikar first. And then I have a question. Can we change to other region for deploying when we are out of VPC limit?
Yes, you could actually change that.
Okay. All right. So I mean, basically, if we change the region, then our limit still stays the same for that particular region.
Yeah, even if the VPC has, I mean, the limit is 5 for VPCs. So if you are having already 5 VPCs there also, you will have a problem.
Okay. All right. So then the next question is from Sharath. Hello. So he asks, how are you deploying the Drupal application from GitLab? Are you using Helm charts or OpenShift templates?
Right. So we are using Helm charts. We already have Helmized, Helmized, Helmized the Drupal application. One of my colleague Akash, he's the one who actually Akash and Sharath, both of them have designed Helm charts, and they've provided us a ready-made Helm charts. That's the reason why I've deployed the application like this. So yeah, we were using Helm charts for deploying Drupal applications.
Awesome. So the next question is, so I mean, it kind of is a follow-up, I think. But Prasad is asking, does it also provide role-based access to the OKD dashboard? Considering different teams only need few parts of the OKD.
Yes, yes, yes. You can even enforce RBAC and you can use that. And there's a small change. I'm sorry, Sharath. So we have Helm chart also, but we have a GitLab templates that we have written for OKD. So as you know, OKD doesn't, I mean, OKD actually doesn't have support for Helm or OpenShift for that matter. So what we did was we used some templates for deploying Drupal applications.
All right. So there's another question from Sharath. So what is the storage solution you are using for creating PVC?
So as I said, we were using EFS before, but we had an issue with EFS where we had an issue in our case where we run a MySQL DB. So MySQL DB, what it was doing is that it is ensuring a lock. So in EFS, you have a restriction in AWS where there are only a prescribed number of locks that are allowed. They are 512. So if it is more than that, it won't support. So we were having more than that number of locks. So that's why we were having issues with EFS. And that's why we actually started exploring OpenEBS, which actually is like just like how you have EBS in AWS. It's an open source solution. So what you do is you create a different EBS volumes, and you create them out like an NFS pool. So once you create it as a pool, and you can use it as an NFS. So we had some experience around that. Particularly, I haven't worked much on OpenEBS, so I cannot comment on that. But this is what happened in our organization. We achieved this through the OpenEBS solution.
Yeah, I mean, and there are still some gaps that we need to fill in, but yeah, I mean, I think
we will be using OpenEBS only. And there are other solutions also for that. So we have something called GlusterFS, which is another storage class. So you can even use GlusterFS and all that for hosting your persistent volumes. And so that is another solution that we are actually, we just started exploring.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we don't know how it will be working, but we have a client who is using that. So we wanted to check with them what is their experience using that, and how are they achieving these requirements of persistent volumes. They are also using OpenShift, so we wanted to check with them.
Cool. So folks, I mean, if you have any more questions, you can pour them in. And if not, I mean, if not right now, I mean, feel free to contact Srikar on Twitter or LinkedIn. I think he prefers LinkedIn. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he will prefer LinkedIn. Yeah, feel free to connect with him, and he'll be more than happy to help out with your questions. So if there are no more, as you know, he's saying through Seth, thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for attending the webinar, and thanks for asking these questions as well. We hope to see you in the next version.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending the webinar, and I am hoping that you had a some informative session today.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.